Inside this room, all of my dreams become realities, and some of my realities become dreams.
What in the wide, wide world of sports is going on here?
Alive! It's alive! It's alive!
You are listening to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute. Here are your hosts, Alan Sanders and Walt Murray.
Well, welcome back, everyone, to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute, a podcast where we break down and celebrate the films of Gene Wilder 1 minute at a time. We are currently looking in Season 1 at Young Frankenstein. I'm your host. I'm Alan Sanders.
And I'm your co-host, Walt Murray.
And joining us once again from Sully Baseball, we've got Paul Sullivan. Welcome, Paul. Thanks for being able to move that dentist appointment.
Well, yeah, the effects of the Novocaine are just beginning to wear off right now, so.
Sorry about the root canal, by the way.
Yeah, you know, I should floss.
It happens. Let's take a look at minute 38 here. Minute 38 begins with our two main protagonists. We've got Dr. Frankenstein and Igor getting ready to continue to wheel the cart with the coffin on top outside of the rain-soaked cemetery. And we end with a constable meeting them in the street after they've had an unfortunate accident where that doesn't seem to be Dr. Frankenstein's hand that's actually sticking out of that coffin. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. Walt, when we first start off, this is another one of those minutes where there's not much dialogue through it, but there's a really funny setup as we start getting that very, very long, almost master shot from way across the town square of them wheeling the cart down these cobblestone streets.
Well, going back to the first time I ever saw this movie, as soon as they brought that cart over the top of that crest, I knew this was going to be bad. Such a great setup. You know, the environment never breaks character. It still has that sense of a monster movie or a horror movie, but you know what's coming. You know that something's about to go out of control here.
Sully, this looks like the Atlanta Braves, usually about mid-season stride.
Well, you know, having issues with their arms is what you're saying?
Just in general, watching a season slowly spiral out of control.
Yeah, and yet still trying to, you know, fake your way through it. Like, oh, we'll be okay. By the way, this is an example of the weather. I'm reminded of the time when I was shooting a film project in Central Florida where it would start pouring like monsoon-level rain and then stop. And so you're seeing here, it was raining like crazy when they were leaving the graveyard, but by the time they get to the town square, we stopped raining. So I'm thinking like either they're in Transylvania or they're just outside of Orlando to just explain the weather in the town here. The shot of them going across the town square is, again, I mean, I'm a bit of a broken record. It's just a beautiful shot. It almost looks like The Third Man. And it's this great kind of Germanic building, and the lighting is so great. And when the discipline of the gag of the coffin sliding off of the cart is in wide shot, you know, they didn't go close. And so you see it flip off, and you see Froderick and Igor running to the coffin. That's all a wide shot, and it's a beautiful wide shot. And again, it's one of those details that you don't necessarily think about while you're watching it, but it's enough of those add up that you realize, oh wow, this is actually a very well-made movie here. It looks very beautiful. And this whole shot, this whole sequence here is beautifully shot, beautifully lit, and it's so silly. I mean, it is quintessential goofball comedy, yet exquisitely made, which is why this film works so great. And it has, I mean, I'm jumping ahead, I guess I'm a little bit here, but it has one of my favorite nonverbal gags in the whole movie, starting around second 30, which is basically the inventory of hands.
Yeah, right. Right. Well, and one thing about this gag, when it comes off, it still fits the movie. It isn't so over the top, ridiculous, and silly that you feel like you're in History of the World Part 1 or something like that. it really fits the humor and the flow of this film.
Yeah. We've mentioned this before. They're not doing a stupid joke for the sake of a stupid joke. The guy's trying to figure out, how do I hide this from the constable? It works in the context of the story we're watching, and yet it's hysterical because part of us thinks, can he get away with this?
Yeah, how is this going to work out? And so it isn't the Mel Brooks crazy silly frat boy kind of humor that you see a lot of times. This really fits the flow of this movie.
Well, what I love about this gag, and I know it's been used multiple times since, I used to be part of an improv comedy troupe where we would do various games, and one of the games was called Hands. And what you would have to do is one actor or one improver would be behind you, and they would put their arms underneath your arms, and you'd put your arms behind your back, so that way their arms were supposedly your arms, but they couldn't see what they were doing. They were behind you.
Yeah.
So we would have to do these bits and gags, and it's always hysterical to the audience because the audience is in on the gag. And that's one of those improv comedy games where you try to figure, the audience knows what's going on, but the person on stage with them doesn't know what's going on, and that's the humor. We're watching, is the cop going to figure it out or not? You know, can he pull this off? And so to me, I laugh every single time I see this because he's doing a great job improving with a dead man's hands.
And a gigantic hand on top of it.
That's so clearly not his hand. That's so clearly not. That's even when he clasps his hand later. That's not the same size hand. But visually, to see him play it off is great.
Well, and I love that the constable's line is, "Do you need a hand?"
And as soon as he does, you've got the visual of him going bing and revealing the hand. He's got the cloak hiding over it. He's trying to keep it from the constable. But when he realizes, well, I'm caught, let's just roll with it. It's like, bing, here's my hand.
Yeah, I've already got one.
Oh, it's so goofy. I mean, there's nothing about this. This is highbrow comedy. This is as goofy as the farting scene in some ways. But it's just, how do we do that? Even like throwing in the hand puns, is just makes this scene, if this scene was not shot as well or didn't have an actor of Gene Wilder's caliber, this would be kind of a groaner. But it works. And you wondered if there was a lot of scenes in the film that got cut out. There was a cut that was nearly an hour longer. You had mentioned the swinging in the rain joke that was in the previous minute. There was probably a lot of scenes like this that just didn't make the cut, but this one did because it just worked. I mean, you could easily see this be a deleted scene. Like they pull the cart out of the cemetery. Next scene, they're in the laboratory. But the scene survived, and because it worked, and because the gag worked, and the gag was empirically funny.
Now, I got to ask, if we go back just a minute for that long shot, when they're coming down and you can tell it's a bit of a angled down cobblestone road, you see something in the road, and that's what actually hits the wagon wheel. It doesn't look like it's a pothole. I can't tell if it's like a brick in the road.
I think it's a rock or something.
It's a stone, I think.
It's a stone in the middle of the road. So I have kind of an issue watching it minute by minute because I'm like, who would leave a boulder right in the middle of the road like that? It's so obvious. And yet it took me doing this minute by minute to realize what that wagon wheel really catches on.
Yeah, and it looks like one of the cobblestones has popped up or something like that.
Dang manhole covers.
Yeah, probably.
So that's what causes the cart to come to an abrupt stop, and then the coffin comes sliding out. Now, there is a bit of a continuity error here if you're into that kind of thing. My wife, I drive her nuts, Paul, because I watch details so closely, usually in movies. I'll be like, oh, wait a minute, that gun was cocked just a second ago, and now he puts it in his waistband, it's not cocked, and now when he pulls it out, now it's cocked again. Or, hey, wait, his shirt button was unbuttoned a second ago, now it's buttoned. When the coffin falls out, the hands are not sticking out of the coffin.
Mm-mm. No, you're right. I didn't catch that, but you're right. Yeah, I drive my kids crazy with it because I'll pause a movie and they're like, oh, great, what did they do wrong now? And that's true. And he actually has to pick it up.
Well, yeah, and when we come to the medium shot and we're to the side of the coffin, he reaches down and realizes apparently a corpse is a little more limber after a few days than I remember, but his hands come out and are sticking up like he's basically got his hands up because he has to now lift them because they're over his head. Over the head of the body.
Yeah, it's kind of odd. So, well, did you notice the beginning of the long running gag through the rest of the movie? The constable, though they're in Transylvania, is speaking with an English accent.
Oh yeah, it's a Cockney almost.
Yeah.
Well, that's the funny thing. Everyone has a different accent other than the traditional accent you would have here. I think maybe Kenneth Mars is closest, but he's more German.
Yeah. I think that's also, that's an American trope, that if you are a foreigner, you have an English accent. I mean, if you look even at the movie Les Miserables, it's like, hello, I'm Gavroche. I'm a French little boy.
Oh yeah, you're real French.
They do that even in some great films, like, Kenneth Branagh's Henry V, when they go to France. Who's the king of France? Paul Scofield. It's like all these people are like, no, who's the queen of France? It's Emma Thompson. It's like, were there no French available here? Everyone's English, and every, Nazis in films are British. There's all these, that you have to be English in order to be, that's how we know you're from a foreign country. I don't know if you ever saw, this is totally wackadoodle, I'm bringing this movie up, but the movie The Mission, which is, I don't know if you ever saw it, it's a Jeremy Irons and Robert De Niro film about the missions in South America in the 18th century. It's a beautiful movie. It's a just exquisite movie. But, like, who are the missionaries? It's like Jeremy Irons. It's Liam Neeson. It's all these, like, with names like Father Rodrigo. Like, really? Really?
Well, I thought the scenery was better than the movie in that one.
I mean, wouldn't that have been a perfect person of, like, no, we'll have Jeremy Irons play him. It's like, it's so bizarre. But, it's really, how do we show that someone's not from the United States of America? We'll give them a British accent and then call it a day.
Well, and the other thing I've noticed of late, and this takes place even in, like, The Walking Dead, we've got all these English actors coming over here and learning to speak with an American accent, because it's like, apparently the only good actors we have out there come from Britain.
It always stuns me when you start saying, wait, we've had now 2 straight British Spider-Men? What? What's going on here? It's like when you find out someone's English, it's sort of like, oh, great. Henry Cavill looks like that and has an English accent. Fantastic. That's what we need in our life. Idris Elba, and I got to see him from The Wire, and then you hear him talk. Wait, what? And, like McNulty from The Wire is a British actor. And there's like, every time that happens, it's like, wait a minute, are we running out of actors in America?
I think that all the time, because I do a lot of, I'm not a professional by any stretch, but I love the craft of acting, been involved in theater and film for a while, a lot of small and independent stuff. But it's like, wait a minute, do American actors suck that bad?
Well, but even when they were talking recently about the next James Bond, an American actor got named in the list of potential Bond. So it's almost like a mixed bag of how we're gonna cast these things, and do we cast him with an English accent? And I think it's easier for a British actor to do an American accent than it is for an American actor to do a British accent.
I guess. I'll tell you, it always throws me, even to this day. I'll never forget when I figured out Bob Hoskins in Who Framed Roger Rabbit has one of the thickest accents in the world. And I was like, what? Because when I saw an interview with him, I said, he's doing a weird accent for this interview, because I just saw Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and he sounded fine.
Yeah. But then again, it's the penance that we're paying for having Renee Zellweger play Bridget Jones.
Yeah, well, nice. Yes, we could. We need to absolve ourselves of our sins of those 3 movies.
Yeah, there's somebody like Kevin Costner trying out, which Mel Brooks skewered in his Robin Hood film. Like, he tried the English accent, or we had Keanu Reeves in Dracula.
Oh yeah, that was horrible.
Yeah.
Actually, Keanu Reeves trying to do it again in Kenneth Branagh's Much Ado About Nothing. He was a great evil guy playing the bastard son, but his accent was terrible.
One of the things that I had, this may be apocryphal, and God knows how we got on this tangent, but one thing that was kind of weird, that there's that period of time in the early 90s when Keanu Reeves kept showing up in movies like Kenneth Branagh's Much Ado About Nothing, or Francis Coppola's Dracula, or Bernardo Bertolucci's Little Buddha. I'm like, what the hell? Why the hell is Keanu Reeves showing up in all these films for? And it turns out, and again, this may be apocryphal, but from what I understood, that a lot of times those films, like the studios, like, in order to get financing, we need to have like a recognizable name on them. And each one of those films had these kind of control freak directors. And Keanu Reeves had a reputation for being incredibly nice, takes direction, doesn't argue with the director, and would actually be like a mediator if there's an argument with another cast member. Like, hey, why don't we all just chill and love being in this movie, man? And even if he was completely not right for the movie, like, and there's few miscastings in the history of Hollywood as horrible as Keanu Reeves as Jonathan Harker in Dracula. But he had the reputation of like, hey, you know what? If you hire Keanu, he's not going to cause trouble. And the studio would say, oh, okay, we'll allow him because people like Keanu and he's in hit movies.
Well, you answered a big question for me because I've never understood how he got cast in anything. I am not a fan of him.
Well, he can work his way into certain films. I thought he's great in The Matrix, and I love him as John Wick. You're looking at me. Wait a second, hold on. Because I just said two movies that are absolutely fantastic in terms of franchises. Well, the third Matrix movie I could do without. But you looked at me, Walt, like I had just got done saying, by the way, I'm about to strip naked and you're going to watch me dance.
Okay, that is worse. Well, you know, I like the action in the John Wick movies, but I don't like the acting.
Is it that you're so tainted against some of the earlier casting of Keanu Reeves that you can't accept him?
That is absolutely what it is.
Interesting.
I thought he was so bad in all of his early movies that I have a hard time buying him in anything else.
Here's the thing. When used correctly, you have Bill and Ted, you have Speed, you have The Matrix, you have John Wick. If you try to expand on anything beyond, he's like a left-handed reliever who's brought in to face that one left-handed batter. He's a specialist. He does one thing well, that is look handsome and dumb. That's what he does. And if the part requires that, like essentially being in The Matrix going, whoa, like I don't understand what's happening, boom, you got it. If you need to go beyond that in any way, shape, or form, you're screwed. You're absolutely screwed.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, you don't pay Keanu Reeves for his dramatic delivery. It's his action sequences and how he looks.
Yep. And he does it well.
I like that analogy. He's your specialty lefty that can come in for that situation deep in the game when you can't afford to lose your one-run lead.
The Giants had a pitcher named Javier Lopez. He wound up getting 4 World Series rings, 3 with the Giants, 1 with the Red Sox. He won part of 4 World Series championships. And he would face one batter a game. There would be a left-handed person who would be in the line. They knew there would come a point late in the game where things were on the line. He would come out. Left-handers could never see his pitch because he was a side armor. They could never make it out. They would ground out to second. It would be the end of the inning. That's what he did. He got 4 World Series rings. Hank Aaron got 1. Javier Lopez got 4. It's not the same Javier Lopez who played for the Braves. It's a different dude. And if you had said, hey, Javier Lopez, why don't you start the game, go 7 innings, he would get shelled. He had his job. Your job is to face one left-handed bat. And by the way, we have moved from Keanu Reeves to Javier Lopez coming out of the bullpen. How are you doing about this discussion of young Frankenstein?
Oh, I love it. So, well, speaking of hands, we'll get back to a right hand. Let's get into, you like that? Let's get to a righty over here. We do have a moment as we start to wrap up this minute when I think it's a brilliant use of the gag now, because now it goes back to what I said about being an improv performer, and literally Gene Wilder is making this up as he goes along with his character of Dr. Frankenstein. He knows he's caught. If anything doesn't make this work, he has got to play this. And when he looks down at his thumb and he's like, you know what, if I just pick something out of my thumb here and just kind of flick it away, the suspicion will be gone. Even though my hand is refusing to move because it's petrified, the fingers splayed out in the death throw. He hopes that works for the constable. And of course, the constable, like in all good scenes like this, wants to play 20 questions.
Yes, but he has to be the least inquisitive constable in the history of law enforcement. I mean, how does he miss that this is a big dead hand?
Well, he's more interested in who's this stranger in the middle of the night. Because anybody out and about past a certain time is up to shenanigans.
Yeah, but obviously that's not the case here.
Well, we're going to continue to explore this as we roll certainly into tomorrow, because this conversation is only just getting underway. Because as we wrap up this minute, the constable does say, "Now, just a minute, sir. I know everyone in this neighborhood, but I've never seen your face before. Can you account for yourself?" And he's like, "Well, I am Dr. Frederick Frankenstein, newly arrived from America." And then it ends with, "Oh, yes." So he goes from super suspicious to taking him completely at his word. "Oh, yeah, that's okay. That's cool."
Which you would have expected him to say, "Oh, the Frankenstein guy. That should have raised more suspicion."
Doesn't ask for ID or anything. Just, I would like to go back to a certain time where I get stopped at the checkpoint late at night and I'm like, "Oh, I'm Alan Sanders." "Oh, okay, you may go about your business, sir." Never happens.
Yeah, well, I guess it would kind of end the movie here if it got too suspicious.
Sully, Paul Sullivan, do you have anything more with minute 38?
No, I think the fact that we did such a deep dive on Keanu Reeves and Javier Lopez, that just shows you I'm out of gas on this minute.
Well, we want to finish up this conversation. We got to find out, does Dr. Frankenstein get away with having this dead corpse-like hand sticking out from underneath his arm on the one side, his other hand on the other side, and the constable interested in trying to figure out a little bit more about this young visitor to Transylvania. Sully, if anybody wants to learn a little bit more about you and what you do as far as your podcast work, where can people find you?
Follow me at Sully Baseball on Twitter. Subscribe to Sully Baseball on Apple Podcast or Stitcher or Podbean, whatever you use. And also subscribe to Real Crime Profile, which is the podcast I produce. That's also available via Apple Podcasts and Stitcher, and we're everywhere. So follow me on Sully Baseball, and you'll be able to see all the stuff that I do.
Walt, where can people learn a little bit more about the Wilder Ride?
Everybody needs to go out to iTunes and find us there, The Wilder Ride. If you would, subscribe to our podcast. If you like what you're hearing, please give us a 5-star rating and make a comment so that your vote is counted.
Now, wait a second. If people are listening right now, and you're saying go out and go find it, how did they get there to begin with?
From our website, www.thewilderride.com, or they may be listening on Google Play or one of the other places like Stitcher or, by this point, iHeartRadio.
Oh, so you want them to make sure they specifically go to iTunes and give us a rating.
Easy for you to say.
Yes, apparently not.
Absolutely. There's some matrix that we are just not going to go into that would be helpful.
Different kind of matrix.
Yeah, different
Keanu
kind of
Reeves
matrix.
does not exist on iTunes.
A not boring matrix that you can find on iTunes that would help us out a lot.
Yeah, in all seriousness, putting a comment and giving us a rating does help in the metrics of making sure which podcasts get spotlighted and highlighted. We would appreciate your comments because we'd love to know what you think about this. And if you are enjoying the podcast and you think we've missed something or you want to add your 2 cents, swing on over to our Facebook page, The Wilder Ride. Find us on Facebook, and we'd love for you guys to like the page, join in the conversation, and who knows, we don't know everything. I can guarantee we don't know everything. So if we left something out, let us know. With that said, we're going to close out minute 38, but tomorrow we're going to dive into this conversation with the constable where he'll tell the young Dr. Frankenstein, "Yes, I was told you were here," and we'll end with what a profound and reverent night is this. And if you don't know what any of that means, you're going to have to come back tomorrow to find out more on this, The Wilder Ride.
And we will talk more about Dr. Frankenstein.
Igor. Igor. iTunes. Javier Lopez, but not the Braves.
Exactly.
All right. Whoa, dude.